Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear viewers. This is the third episode on the issue of music. We have seen in the last two episodes how people have said that there are certain verses in the Quran which actually proscribe music. And we have also seen how Ustaz Ghamidi has answered and said that none of these verses has been properly understood and they have an entirely different meaning. Not only is he has presented his own understanding of those verses, but he has also presented a host of scholars from the past, ancient scholars as well, and as we also seen that some contemporary scholars have also been presented and shown that the verses that have been put forth as verses which actually proscribe music are not the ones which do so, and none of our past authorities have used these verses in this regard. We have also seen how Ustaz Ghamidi has explained that it is basically the vulgar use of music or the wrong use of music in which either we use music in the form of certain polytheistic practices like religious songs in which we elevate the status of the Prophet and at the same time also add some other innovations that make it prohibited, and at the same time music which could be indecent or vulgar, or which was the case in Arabia, that it was part and parcel of those assemblies and gatherings in which people would drink liquor and would be exposed to all kinds of lustful activities. And we also started to study a list of 26 narratives which Ustaz Ghamidi has presented. We have studied 7 of those narratives and seen how some of those narratives have clearly shown that even the Prophet did not discourage listening to music, and some other narratives that we saw gave us the background that how liquor and lustful activities had become part and parcel of those gatherings in which music and songs were listened and heard. We'll be continuing with that list of Sahih and Hasan narratives today and see how all these narratives actually reinforce the opinion of Ustaz Ghamidi that it is not anywhere in the Quran or in Hadith that music per se, music in the absolute sense, has been prohibited. It is only its vulgar or wrong use that has been prohibited. So we will begin with that list. We're going to start with Hadith number 8. This is actually reported by Musnad of Ahmad ibn Hanbal. And Sayyid ibn Yazid, he states that a woman came to the Prophet. The Prophet asked Aisha, "Do you know this woman?" She replied, "No." He said, "She is a songstress of such and such a tribe. Would you like to hear a song from her?" She replied, "Why not?" Saib says, then the Prophet gave her a plate. She sang a song to Aisha. After that, the Prophet said, "Satan has blown into her nostrils." Clearly, we can see from this narrative, and Ustaz Ghamidi also surmises that it is here that the Prophet has actually said, "Would you like to hear a song from her?" And Aisha replied, "Why not?" And then the Prophet actually gave that songstress a plate in which she could strike her hand maybe and sing a song. And she did sing a song for Aisha. And then the Prophet actually said that, well, because of the fact that this song is something that, or singing is something that can work both ways. So he made this very meaningful remark that Satan has blown into her nostrils, which means that the song that she is singing, of course, it is something that can always be the right way to do so, but any wrong use of singing is going to be really a big test. So it is here again that when the Prophet said that Satan has blown into her nostrils, he was not at all implying that all songs per se are wrong or they are in the sense proscribed, but he was also referring to its wrong use. Otherwise, why would have he given the plate to that songstress and asked Aisha to listen to the song, and he himself were present there? So this is a very, very strong testimony in favor of the fact that it is only the vulgar or wrong use of music that is under question. Now we come to the 9th narrative. This narrative has been reported by Buraida al-Aslami, and it has been reported in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal as well. So the text of this narrative, as I said, has been reported by Buraida al-Aslami. So it is stated by Buraida al-Aslami that the Prophet returned victoriously from a battle with its spoils. A black slave girl came to him. She said, "O Messenger of God, I had vowed that if God brings you back safely, I will play the tambourine in front of you and sing a song." The Prophet said, "If you had made a vow, then go ahead. Otherwise, do not." She said, "Yes, I did in fact make a vow." After that, the Prophet sat down and she began playing the tambourine. While this was going on, Abu Bakr came along with some other people. Then Umar arrived That slave girl was wearing a shawl. When she saw him, she hid the tambourine beneath it. God's messenger said, Umar, Satan is afraid of you. I was present here, and these people continued to come, and she did not stop singing. But when you arrived, she did what she did. Now, clearly, here also we can see the Prophet actually pointing to the fact that at times this music or this singing can be something which is instrumental in stirring base emotions. And when, of course, Caliph Umar or Umar Ritala Anhu was not there, and Abu Bakr was there, and other people were there, the slave girl was singing. And she was singing in the presence of the Prophet, and she had made a vow as well. And the Prophet did not stop her from singing. And when he said that, well, Umar, even Satan is afraid of you, pointing to the fact that this woman is singing, it was not because it was singing per se. It was not because singing per se was being prohibited. It was just expressing the fact that Umar, because of his certain awe-inspiring personality, was being pointed out. And obviously, this could not have been the case because of Umar that the Prophet had stopped her, or she hid the instrument behind her shawl. It was only because of his extra sensitivity that this was done. We now come to the 10th narrative, and this narrative has actually been mentioned in Sunan Nasa'i al-Kubra, and it has been reported by Anas ibn Malik. So Anas ibn Malik reports that when God's messenger returned to Medina after a battle or a journey, some black men of Medina welcomed him. They were dancing before him and singing in their tongues, Muhammad has arrived, he is a pious person. They were saying something in their language which the Prophet could not understand. So he asked people, what are they saying? The people said that they are saying that Muhammad is a pious servant of God. Anas did not mention anything in this incident that showed that the Prophet had stopped them from singing. So clearly we can even see that when these black slaves were singing, the Prophet did not stop them from singing. He only asked that what exactly are they singing, so that he should get to know what they are singing. So now we come to the 11th narration, and this is recorded in the Sunan of Ibn Majah, reported by Anas ibn Malik. He states that the Prophet passed by a lane of Medina while some girls were playing the tambourine and singing this song, "We are the girls belonging to the Banu Najjar tribe. It is our good fortune that Muhammad has become our neighbor." The Prophet said, God knows that I love you people. Again, we can clearly see that how the Prophet actually heard the songs of these girls, and he never stopped them, he never proscribed them, this song singing in any way. And in fact, the sentence that he is reported to have said, God knows that I love you people. And this again is a narrative which clearly shows that had singing been something prohibited, what is reported here would never have been reported. We now come to the 12th narration, and this has been reported by Khalid ibn Zakwan, and it has been recorded in the Sunan of Ibn Majah as well. So as far as Sunan Ibn Majah is concerned, Khalid ibn Zakwan reporting this from the Prophet, he said, we were at Medina on the day of Ashur, and girls were playing the tambourine there and singing. When we saw this, we came over to Rabi ibn Mu'awwiz and mentioned this to her. At this she said, on the day of my wedding, the Prophet came over to me in the morning and sat on my bed sheet the way you are sitting. At this time, two girls were sitting in front of me and playing the tambourine. They were playing the tambourine and singing a eulogy for those martyred in the Battle of Badr. And the lyrics of their song were, at this time, that Prophet is among us who also knows what is going to happen tomorrow. When the Prophet ﷺ heard this, he said, daughters, do not say this. Only God knows what will happen in the coming days. Now, this is a very clear depiction of the fact, as Ustaz Ghamidi has surmised, that the Prophet did not in any way stop these girls from singing the eulogy. All that he did was he corrected certain words or the content or the lyrics of that song, and he said that, well, knowledge of the future is something that I don't have, so you should not say that the Prophet knows what is going to happen tomorrow. What you should say is that only God knows what will happen in the coming days. This again is a very potent example of the fact that how something is not wrong in itself, but only the content or the words may be wrong, which the Prophet corrected. We now come to the 13th narrative in this regard, and this has been recorded by Imam Bukhari and narrated by Aisha radhiyallahu anha. So it is narrated from Aisha that she sent a bride to a person belonging to the Ansar. At this, the Prophet stated, Aisha, didn't you have any arrangement for entertainment because the Ansar like singing on such occasions? Now, you can clearly see that on such occasions, the Prophet actually encouraged singing and music because he knew that the wedding was taking place among the Ansar, and the Ansar, they liked entertainment and music. So clearly, if the Prophet was asking or encouraging Aisha to have done so, it could never have been the case had music been prohibited. Now we come to the 14th narration in this matter, and this narration has been reported by Ibn Majah also, and it has been recorded by Abdullah ibn Abbas from Aisha. So Abdullah ibn Abbas from Aisha reports that she wedded off one of her relatives to a person of the Ansar tribe. God's messenger also came along and said, "Have you sent the girl away?" Aisha replied in the affirmative. He remarked, "Did you send some singer along with her?" Aisha replied in the negative. At this he said, "The tradition of singing is found among the Ansar. It would have been better if you had sent someone along with her who could have sung these lines. We have come to you, we have come to you, may we live in peace, and you also live in peace." Like in the previous narrative, it seems that the Prophet has once again asked Aisha that if she was a witness to the fact that there was an Ansar girl who was getting married amongst the Ansar, there was a girl who was getting married amongst the Ansar, and the Prophet spoke to Aisha and said that she should have sent some singer or people who could have sung along with them, because the tradition of singing is found in the Ansar, and it could have been better if someone had gone there and he would have said these words, even the words were suggested. Now we come to the 15th narration in this regard, and this narration has been reported in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, and the narration itself has been reported by Abu Balaj al-Fazari. So Abu Balaj al-Fazari says, "I said to Muhammad ibn Habib, I have married 2 women. However, in none of my weddings was the tambourine played." He replied, "You did a very bad thing. God's messenger has said, the difference between right and wrong on occasions of marriage is the sound of songs and the playing of the tambourine with them." Some narratives cite these words of Muhammad ibn Hatib as well. God's messenger said, "What distinguishes right from wrong on occasions of marriage is tambourine and the sounds that emanate on this occasion." Now, this is a further example of how the Prophet has actually said that a marriage which is properly held is a marriage in which songs are sung and the playing of tambourine takes place. In fact, he has said that this is the difference. I mean, this is what Muhammad ibn Hatib has reported, that God's messenger even said that. So clearly we can see that on occasions of festivity, especially of marriage, the Prophet encouraged that this should happen. Now we come to the 16th narrative. This narrative has been reported by Aisha radhiyallahu anha, and it has been recorded by Imam Bukhari in his Al-Jami al-Sahih. So as far as the text of this narrative is concerned, Urwa reports from Aisha that Abu Bakr once came over to my house. On this occasion, 2 slave girls were singing the songs related to the Battle of Boas. The Prophet was also lying down, resting there with his head covered. But he was not saying anything to them. He was also not stopping them. Both the slave girls were not professional singers. When Abu Bakr saw all this, he was astonished and said, "Why these devilish musical instruments in the house of the Prophet?" It was Eid that day. When God's messenger heard these words of Abu Bakr, he uncovered his face and said, "Let these girls sing, O Abu Bakr. Every nation has an Eid day, and today is our Eid." Then, when Abu Bakr got involved in some work, I gestured towards these girls to go. So they went away from there. Now, clearly this shows that the Prophet did not stop. He did not stop the girls from singing. And when even Abu Bakr came to his presence and said that these devilish instruments are being strung and they have been played, the Prophet said it is Eid day. And if there is any devilish thing about these instruments, of course, it's referring to their wrong use. Had they been devilish per se, how could have the Prophet allowed them to be sung in his presence? So now we come to the 17th narrative, and this narrative has been actually reported by Amir ibn Sa'd al-Bajali. And this narrative has been recorded in Sunan al-Nisa'i al-Kubra. And as we look upon the words of this narrative, Amir ibn Sa'd al-Bajali reports, "In a wedding I went and sat with Qaraza ibn Qarb, Abu Masud Ansari and Zayd ibn Sabit. I suddenly saw that 2 girls were playing the tambourine and singing songs. I said, Glory be to God. You are the companions of God's messenger. In fact, you fought the battle of Badr alongside him, and all this is happening in front of you. Qaraza and Abu Mas'ud said, if you want, you can sit here with us and listen. If you want, you can go away from here, because we have been allowed to sing on the occasions of marriage and to cry at the time of death if there is no lamentation in it. Again, we can clearly see that, of course, singing per se is something that is not disallowed. Had this been the case, even singing it in marriage ceremonies would not have been allowed. It is clearly the negative use of singing that again is in question and discussion here. We now move on to the 18th narrative in this regard, and this has been recorded by Ishaq ibn Rahway in his Musnad, and it's reported by Aisha. So Aisha states that God's messenger heard Abu Musa Ash'ari recite the Quran. He had a very melodious voice, and that instance was sitting in the mosque and reciting the Quran. When the Prophet heard his recitation, he remarked, no doubt he has been given an instrument from the instruments of the progeny of David, referring to the fact that David, the Prophet, would sing on his harp the Zabur or the Psalms. And in a very similar way, when Abu Musa Ash'ari recited the Quran in a very melodious voice, the Prophet actually became absolutely overjoyed and he was enthralled by the voice. Again, reciting the Quran in such a melodious voice does show the temperament of religion in this regard.